The Haunting Tales of Dark Shivering. Dark Shivering is a quaint village which lies on the English and Welsh border. It is notoriously difficult to find. It was renamed Dark Shivering in the early 1800s to break away from its pagan-rooted original name, which was Witchstow. This roughly translates as Witch's Holy Place, and at the time was no longer deemed appropriate for the village. After many years of staying in Dark Shivering whilst on business, I have managed to amass quite a few stories from the dark side. Here are a few to make you shiver. The Old Cotton Mill. The Old Mill Business Park is what used to be called the Old Grantley Cotton Mill. The site now consists of 3 long but narrow buildings that each have 4 floors plus a basement. The largest and main building has a warehouse-type structure attached at one end that regularly sees lorries coming and going and forklift trucks zipping around. The main part of this building is now used as offices for different businesses. There is a large gravelled area in front of the mill, big enough to host lorries coming and going, and it has a sweeping driveway up from the main road. Although the water wheel is still attached to the building, it is rotting badly and needs attention at some point. Grantley Mill was first opened in 1790 and was a typical carbon copy of most working mills of its day. It was rather in fact a poorhouse that worked men, women and children until its closure in 1930. Its working conditions were poor, which is not unusual, and it offered no comfort to the many families who were forced to work there or die. Whilst on business mainly in the 1980s, the business park is somewhere that I had to visit on a regular basis, as one of my long-standing clients rented office space on the 3rd floor. I actually enjoyed visiting this huge space that oozed history from every orifice. It has long characterless hallways on each level, but the offices that come off them are bright and airy and are a pleasure to be in, especially in the summer with the sun streaming through the windows. Renting some of the offices at the time was a catalogue company, a double glazing firm, a charity organization, a chartered surveyor, a landscaping company and a distribution agency who used the warehouse. There is more space available to rent, which means that a lot of the offices are left empty until let. Whenever I arrived on site, I would have a coffee in the rest area with whoever was about. The people who worked there all knew each other and were very friendly, which sometimes led you to forget that they didn't all work for the same company. The girls from the catalogue office were particularly chatty and friendly and were always glad of an excuse for a tea break. They especially liked to fill me in on the ghostly goings-on that they swear happened at the mill. I always listened to their stories. Sometimes they would keep me there way past my planned departure time. Marlene especially had one story she liked to tell of what she called the creeper, and so I'll share it with you now. Marlene had been working there for nearly 10 years. In fact, they were the first company to rent office space there. Over this time, other companies had come and gone, and so the building has had highs and lows in terms of the volume of people on site. Marlene had been working there for over a year when her workload changed. She began dealing with work from other countries and so had to be in the office until midnight on a shift pattern with the other girls. At first she didn't think anything of being alone in the building until late, as there was always a security guard who sat in reception and patrolled the grounds. It was her first late night shift, and walking down the long corridors and empty stairwells left a chill up her spine that she had never experienced before. She put it down to it being late and dark, and her mind working overtime. She said it felt as though someone was there watching you, but you couldn't see who it was. The next night, as it was nearing time for Marlene to leave, she started to feel nervous about having to walk down the corridor on her own. She had a strong feeling not to do it, but obviously had to. So out she ventured again at a fast pace, all the while thinking how glad she was that this was her last late night until the following week. During the day shift, the girls and Marlene all agreed that the building was creepy at night and none of them liked leaving the safety of their office to go home. They decided it would be a good idea to ask the night security guard to escort them from their office to their vehicles in the evening, on the pretense that it was safer for them as women working late on their own. The guard had no problem with this, and it eased their fears no end. So this is what the women in the office always did, and funnily enough, the guard said that he too felt a little uneasy walking the corridors at night on his own. Although he had never seen anything unusual, it was more the creepy feeling that made him uneasy. Everything was working out well with the arrangement, and the women felt a lot safer being escorted by the guard. Things changed, however, when the company that owns the building decided to put floor-to-ceiling length mirrors at either end of each corridor in a bid to reflect more natural light up and down the walkway from the windows. It seemed like a good idea and did make a big difference during the day to the quality of light thrown down the long passages. One night Marlene wasn't feeling too well, and at 11 p.m. she decided to leave as she had done the vast majority of her work and was struggling to concentrate. She tried to call the guard at the reception desk, but there was no answer, so she presumed he was on a patrol, and by this point she felt so unwell that she just wanted to leave straight away. She left the office and locked the door behind her, then started her way down the passage. As Marlene dragged herself along the corridor, she kept seeing a flash of movement in the mirror ahead of her. So when she got up close, she looked deep into the reflection and to her horror saw an apparition crawling along the ceiling behind her. She quickly turned to look at the actual ceiling behind her, and to her horror it really was there. Crawling in a predatory manner behind her. It looked like a shadowy, hazy image of a gremlin, but bigger and longer. It moved almost like a frog crawling along and was easily the size of a small human. As she stared in disbelief, her eyes began to water with terror, and she had to force herself to run as quickly as she could out of the building. It was after this that Marlene requested their office be moved from the 3rd floor to the 1st floor. At the time she was frightened beyond belief, but over time she tries not to think about it so she can carry on working there. None of the other staff have ever seen this creeper, but Marlene won't look in the corridor mirrors anymore. She thinks maybe this creeper entity stays up on the 3rd floor. Well, that's what she's hoping anyway. Marlene liked to tell this story, and it never changed. It was always the same. One day not long after hearing this story, I was talking to the security guard one night, and he had an idea as to why the building might be haunted. He told me that when the building was being refurbished, the security company that he worked for had a contract to check the building nightly. One night the guard arrived on site and was met by a gang of boys screaming and running from the building. He managed to collar hold of one lad and asked him what the hell was going on. The boy was clearly terrified and kept fighting to get free. All he would say to the guard was that there was something on the 3rd floor. The boy eventually managed to escape the guard's grip and sprinted off down the driveway. The guard went into the mill and searched everywhere for signs of a break-in. He could see that the boys had all scrambled through a 1st-floor window left open by the builders and so secured it and continued on upstairs. When he got to the 3rd floor, which at the time was one large open space awaiting refurbishment, he found the remnants of a Ouija board, some candles and a pentagram. The guard realized what the boys had been up to and thought they must have scared themselves silly. He probably chuckled to himself, thinking of the teenagers hot-footing it back to their mums. It may be a coincidence, but something scared those boys, and maybe it was the same thing that scared Marlene. The basement is another area that people who work at the mill don't like. It is a vast area and stretches the whole length of the building. It is filled with pipes, cables and a heating system. The walls are made from dirty, crumbling old bricks and the air feels damp. The businesses above are allowed to store small items down there, like fans, heaters, and desk etc. And so on the odd occasion people do brave the dark, dingy space. When they do though, many have reported hearing voices down there. People have heard muffled conversations, a woman screaming and a man hissing, "Get out." I can only think that these voices are echoes from the past. From the poor unfortunate people who found themselves in what was a soul-destroying place many years ago. Another ghost who is said to haunt the mill is that of a small boy. He is on the 1st floor and most people who work there have seen him. To all intents and purposes he looks like a real, solid little boy, and most staff when they first see him assume it is someone's child visiting the workplace. He seems happy enough, and people have reported a child's laughter and chattering. The ladies from the catalog have left a toy box in the reception seating area, and mysteriously, when no one is looking, the toys get moved around the room. His favorite toy seems to be a small brown teddy bear that he likes to put on one of the chairs. I thought it was very sad for a little boy to be left behind like that, but the catalog ladies assure me he is always happy. Dark Shivering has lots more stories to give up, and I'm always collecting them for future books. Join me next time for more haunting tales of Dark Shivering. Don't forget to click like and subscribe so you never miss another ghostly episode.